the stillness of my room as I turned to my bag that was looming beside my bed as I sank to my knees, palms sweaty and trembling as I pressed them together in desperate reverence. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. The words practically forced themselves out of my throat, desperate to reach him. This is my first confession, my Saviour. I beg for your mercy. I have broken one of your orders. I stole from an abandoned building me and my friends snuck into, and I believe I have taken something from you. I believe I have failed you, my Saviour. My room remained still, lacking a response to my cries. But I beg that you listen to what I have to say. The room with the swirling sigils that I took from your crypt. It's just whenever I approached it, I began to understand how hysterical my story sounded. But while it sounded peculiar, if anyone was going to understand my turmoil and forgive me of my trespasses, it would be my Saviour. I clutched my faith like a lifeline and pressed on. Whenever I approached your rune, Father, well, it was as if I finally began to hear your voice. It thickened within myself in energy as if the very walls had begun to listen to what I had to say, yet I almost didn't believe myself as I heard the words come out of my own mouth. Looking back beside me to the bed, I listened closely. Once again, I began to notice an irrational rhythm forming, one that must be listened to or he would get angry. The longer I listened to it, the more I began to understand it was as if he were acting to a symphony of his creations, each note woven in a haunting chorus that celebrated my presence. They celebrated my presence and my faith in you, Father. If I hadn't listened to your voice and taken the room from you, I would have been playing the role of a blind man, ignoring the faith you had laid out before me. My heart raced with the gravity of my actions. Yet, Father, I am so deeply sorry for what I have done. I promise to bear any penance you wish to deliver upon me. The sound echoing in the stillness as my hallway beckoned to me with a cold murmur. An impenetrable darkness lay beyond my door, swallowing the light from my room and leaving only an abyss, pure and suffocating. It stared back at me, a void that was whispering to me as if the shadows themselves were daring me to step into their depths. A chilling familiarity washed over me as I peered down the hallway. It certainly was the hallway I had walked through every day, yet never had it felt so alive, so intent on watching me in return. There was nothing overly threatening about my hallway, and yet I continued to catch my breath, shaking anxiously, sweat falling down my face, as all I did was stand there, transfixed, staring into my hallway, the very hallway I had walked through since the day I first slept in this house, yet had now transformed into something else. This wasn't my hallway. But my body was wrong to be scared. Fear felt like a betrayal of the gift my Saviour had bestowed upon me. This was his penance, part of his great and glorious plan for us all, so we could thrive. All I had to do was continue listening to him. He didn't like it when my mind began to wander. He wanted me to listen to him, such a simple request. Truly, my Saviour was granting me mercy. The longer I stared at his gift, the more I felt his voice stirring within me, calling out just for me. Yet I struggled to grasp his words. I couldn't quite make it out, so I stepped closer. They grew clearer, yet still remained elusive. So I stepped closer. I was hanging on the edge of his revelation, and he wanted to share with me, but his words, though resonant, twisted into something incomprehensible. What was once divine now sounded like mournful wails, moans that had never been heard. I tried to make sense of it all, but why he wanted me to listen to this was something I couldn't fathom. I had not understood his wonderful gift of penance. I had failed him again, so I stepped even closer, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't resist. My bedroom door closed behind me, basking me in his absoluteness, as my mind focused solely on one purpose, to listen to my Saviour's every word. I longed to share this divine blessing with my family, to show them I had been chosen, so I stepped forward into his darkness, placing my hand on my parents' door handle. But to do so, I had accidentally ignored my Saviour. He stopped me from committing such an ignorant sin just by warning me of his presence. It froze my entire body. The parents' door. He had cleansed me of my sin before I had even committed it, yet the meaning behind his chosen word don't gnawed at me. Was I far too weak and foolish to grasp the weight of this order? Should I interpret it literally, or was it a test of my faith? Doubt swirled in my mind, a storm of uncertainty about whether I had already angered my Saviour, but I pressed on, determined to share his gift with my parents, believing they had strayed too far from his path. Empowered by his presence, I would find them and guide them back to him. I put my faith in you, my Saviour, I whispered, a shiver coursing through me as I finally became aware of the cold digging into my bones. I crushed the threshold into my parents' room, feeling the warmth of his omnipotence fade, replaced by a chilling uncertainty that wrapped me in a shroud. The room creaked shut behind me as my gaze instantly fell upon two decaying skeletons that were sprawled across my parents' bed. A wave of rancid rot washed over me almost immediately, so overpowering it forced me to my knees. The rough carpet that pressed against my palms grounded me in reality again, as I could taste my own saliva, a shocking reminder of my existence amidst this blessing. Why did this sensation feel so profound? Had I not even realized how my senses had been dulled, reduced to the singular ability to hear his voice echoing in my hallway? How marvelous, I thought, that he could orchestrate such a grotesque revelation in his unfathomable wisdom, each moment dripping with his dark purpose, and I marveled at the twisted beauty of it all. I began slowly dragging my body over to the skeletons, inspecting them, yet it didn't take me long to recognize my own parents. It looks like they had been laying here for weeks, decaying much faster than average. Cracks forming within their bones, slowly turning into nothingness, void of purpose. I couldn't help but feel sadness. My parents will never get to experience his glorious words before the skeletons disappeared. I noticed from each of their foreheads they had a matching sigil. A sigil that had multiple lines swirling around each other before they too crumbled into dust. How these old bones knew about the rune I brought home was beyond me. An unsettling curiosity had grasped me within such a simple question, compelling me to stumble towards my parents' mirror. There, a frail figure stared back at me. I fell to the ground, only to realize he was mimicking my every movement. A wave of relief had washed over me now. I stood upright, facing the truth of my drastic change. I was thin, so very thin that you could play a melody using the arteries flowing out of my tight skin. Dark bruises were distributed over my body as if a wild animal had attacked me brutally up and down, though none of these wounds were deep enough to kill me. Yet they were deep enough to draw fresh blood. Among these marks were others, distinct and deliberate, left by my mother's mascara of all things. I counted 16 vertical lines trailing down my wrist as an instinct very familiar to me took over. Reaching for her mascara, I drew one more line. 7. A chill ran through me, the weight of my act settling like a curse upon my skin. An overwhelming sense of comfort washed over me, a chilling contrast to the decay that surrounded me. My parents were taken from me, and I couldn't help but feel I was going to suffer the same fate. Now noticing the same sigil that was on my forehead, I burst into a fit of revelation, raging fear as I collapsed to the floor once more, struck by the realization that I had been here before. How many times had I played out this exact scene? He grew tired of waiting for me to return. His presence began seeping through the door, a silent shadow creeping towards me. The sigil that was etched into my forehead began to pulsate in my mind like a beacon. Perhaps if I returned the rune to my Saviour, he would lift the curse that had claimed my parents, resurrecting them from the depths of decay. He'll know how to save them. He'll know how to save me. I just need to get back to the rune. The door to my parents' room swung open as my lord rushed in. Extinguishing the few light sources that remained, he welcomed me back into his embrace as I felt his tiny tendrils of darkness claw in my mind, sifting through my thoughts and feelings any distractions from his orders, as I felt an unsettling chaos unfold in the silence of his presence, yet I could feel the fury radiating from him. An anger that tightened the air around me, suffocating the room with an oppressive dread. They say that my Saviour's powers had always been incredible, that if he wanted to, he could wipe down villains and armies in single blows. But they say what made him so worthy of this power was his ability to smile at his enemies and grant them mercy, even in the most dire of situations. I couldn't see it, but I was certain I could feel him smiling at me. He truly didn't wipe me down in a single blow. Instead, it felt like 1,000 tiny ones, like arrows penetrating my body, archers targeting every molecule of my body, never running out of arrows, never running out of blood. His penance pierced my skin. I hesitated and I stared into the nothingness to where my pain was coming from. I had promised to take it in any form it took, but I had also had to guide my parents back onto the right path. My vision began to get fuzzy, my head feeling light, to continue exuding so much resilience is something my body was currently incapable of. My Lord brought me to my knees as I brought my sweating bones back in reunion. I began to pray, feeling a connection of the void he had created, beginning to listen to his soft whispers that echoed in my mind, becoming deeper into my devotion towards him. My body felt hollow. In the suffocating darkness, I began to question if I had stepped too close to the sun. Maybe understanding my Savior isn't something we are supposed to do. Perhaps we should just rely on our faith and trust he knows what's best for us, rather than question his orders and beliefs. I broke my prayer and crawled to my body, noticing the fresh blood that he had taken from me. I fell into my room, closing it behind me, sealing off the world outside, as I searched for the source of all my fear and anxiety that had randomly risen from within me. Why was I so scared? Did I have any reason to be this way? The realization ignited a spark of urgency within me. Of course! I locked the door, the heavy click echoing in the stillness of my room. Turning to my bag that was looming beside the bed, I sank to my knees, palms sweaty and trembling. I pressed them together in desperate reverence. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned.